miss me?
Why, yes, I did. I've been looking forward to finishing your annoying friends.
We're at the United States National Library of Medicine. This is the Genetics Home Reference, your guide to understanding genetic conditions. Here we're looking at the SHH gene. The SHH gene in humans provides instructions for making a protein called Sonic Hedgehog. You see, a scientist's daughter brought home an issue of Sonic the Comic, and the guy kind of liked it. So when he discovered this particular gene and associated protein, he named it Sonic Hedgehog. The scientific community didn't take kindly to a very serious protein being called Sonic Hedgehog. They felt it devalued something which was very important, but as the person who discovered it, he got to name it. Later, a small molecule was discovered that inhibited Sonic Hedgehog. This small molecule was known as Robotnikinin, named after Dr. Robotnik. What we can gather here is that scientists are huge nerds. After countless bad or mediocre games, for 3 months, Sonic was good again. And we learned a lesson. Don't let Team Sonic make it. It's no secret that I'm a fan of 2D side-scrolling platformers. Unlike many of my friends who are on Team Mario or Team Sonic, I've had access to both, so I've never had that stigma against Nintendo or Sega in their early years. It was a safe bet to say that I was a fan of both franchises. Now, the original Sonic the Hedgehog was a good game overall, but it had some growing pains. From Sonic 2, 3, and Knuckles, they've created a brilliant set of games around 3 principles: speed, momentum, and exploration. Sonic is synonymous in most people's minds with speed, however, without the momentum-based physics creating a fast-paced game, the speed would have been pointless. It would have just been white noise. Instead, Sonic can go up and around loops. Give enough momentum, he can launch himself into the air and reach places that wouldn't be accessible with just running and jumping. That multiple path approach brings us to the third and final tenet of Sonic, which is exploration. The stages of classic Sonic the Hedgehog games feature multiple horizontal segments across the same vertical space. And getting to each route means your journey through the level will be a little bit or very, very different each time. Hidden power-ups and portals to secret stages littered all along the side paths mean the game is even more jam-packed with content. Although its perfected form only spanned 3 games, Sonic 2, 3, and Knuckles, it was enough for countless ROM hacks and fan games to show that people can get it or fail to get it. It's a very niche game style that Sonic Team created. And I think a good comparison here is to the Mega Man franchise. While in Mega Man they would make very tiny tweaks to some of the powers and for the most part just iterate on what they had done again and again and again, whereas Sonic Team felt they needed to experiment and try new things each time. When only iterating on what works, you always run the risk of people becoming bored of your game. That's why Mega Man had to change things up and do Mega Man X. And that's why Mega Man X itself ended up giving way to Mega Man Zero and Mega Man ZX. It's because people can only stick with a certain formula that's unrefined for so long before it needs to be changed in some significant way. The problem is, after Sonic and Knuckles, each time they made a new Sonic game from that point on, instead of going back to what worked, they were driven to try something new. And when experimenting, you run the risk of making something that is inferior to what previously worked. That would lead to the abject failures like Knuckles Chaotix, and would eventually lead us into the 3D Sonic space. While we've got a ton of fans who would hail Sonic Adventure as being the best thing since sliced bread, to me it was a broken, buggy, glitchy mess. Those of you who are on my channel regularly know when I talk about Elder Scrolls games, I keep bringing up the second game, Daggerfall, which would be my all-time favorite Elder Scrolls game if it weren't so buggy and glitchy. Sonic Adventure is nothing like that. There is so much wrong with the game that Sonic Adventure deserves its own video. But more than anything, I'd like to say that it's unintuitive. It makes no sense in either story or gameplay. But if I focused just on Sonic Adventure, I'd be here all day. Compared to the side-scrolling platformers of old, where the point and purpose was known merely by pressing buttons, Sonic Adventure just had way too many ideas that could have worked each in their own space, but they were not sufficiently polished. And this will be a trend going forward with Sonic Team as Sonic Adventure 2 tightened up the Sonic style stages. So when you're playing the Sonic the Hedgehog stages, Sonic Adventure 2 established what 3D Sonic gameplay was supposed to be like, made it fun, made it what it was supposed to be. However, that tightened up gameplay was peppered in between various horrible Tails, Knuckles, and various other stages, which were again unpolished and generally a mess. Sonic Adventure 2 was the moment that they could have made 3D Sonic great, but it's clear that creating the absolute best was never their intention. They needed to create something that was popular by creating a new gimmick and expanding on a pool of characters that, well, some people like this character, some people like that character, but in general they were diluting the pool by creating each new character. And as a result, there was less time and energy being put on any one specific character. Thus, what should have been tight and focused became watered down. Yes, I implied that 3D Sonic was never great. It never was. 3D Sonic stages are all pre-scripted set pieces designed to be done one way and none other. Sometimes there are diverging routes, but those are, again, very gimmicky, very set piece, and they don't really allow for player control in the moment. They're meant to run automatically for the most part. This stands in sharp contrast to what I talked about earlier with 2D Sonic, which ran on the three principles. This created more variety and replayability. I will admit, though, the 2D side-scrolling Sonics have nothing compared to the spectacle of the 3D Sonic stages as the camera pans up as Sonic is performing a loop, and it looks visually impressive. However, you don't actually build up the momentum to get into that loop. You just run over speed boosters and the whole thing runs automatically. And by about the second loop you encounter, that novelty wears off and you're realizing that the game is more or less playing itself. Same thing for most jumps in the 3D Sonic stages. If you hit the jump right before the pit, you'll actually die, because the game puts springboards at the end of the pit in order to launch you up, because you would otherwise run off it like an idiot. 3D Sonic games actively punish you for trying to take agency as a player, whereas the 2D Sonics have obstacles that you are overcoming. It stands in sharp contrast to the pre-scripted and guided 3D segments. The sad thing is that if they had paid more attention to how 3D Sonic levels worked, actually gave you a reason to actively use your button inputs other than for the pre-scripted press button not to die, they would have had something which would be truly great that could rival the 2D games. They could have given you, the player, a reason to actually play through these stages, and they simply didn't. So, now that we've discussed 3D Sonic and 2D Sonic, let's talk about Sonic Generations. Oh, Sonic Generations, how much I wanted to love it. However, the classic stages were just a little off. The controls were a little floaty, the stages were a little too vertically narrow. In short, classic Sonic didn't feel like classic Sonic at all, but rather a modern interpretation of what classic Sonic would be in a modern Sonic game. But you know what? Almost every part of Sonic Generations that featured other than classic was better than the version in that respective game. In other words, they took a vertical slice of each of the games and they refined the hell out of it. Generations was really the savior of every part that it showcased. It made the whole Sonic series look better than it was. And that's kind of interesting as a concept. Sonic Generations almost made Sonic great again, with the exception of, again, that floaty, somewhat vertically awkward, classic Sonic. So here we are, Sonic Mania comes out, and for all the reasons I've listed before, I love it. It captured just perfectly what made 2D Sonics great. They iterated on the old levels, they created new levels with the old style, with new quirks and tricks. With this celebration of what made Sonic great, it was time for the newest entry in the Sonic franchise, Sonic Forces. Oh boy, Sonic Forces. Where do I even begin? It's very clear that Team Sonic wanted to make Sonic popular again. Not great, because it doesn't seem that great has ever been on their mind. They want to make Sonic popular. That's why they approved Sonic Mania, was to get people who loved classic Sonic, who understood the three principles I talked about earlier, wanted to get them back. And this is an attempt to make Sonic popular. So here is Sonic Forces. So it's very clear that Sega, Sonic Team, or a combination thereof, was attempting to dissect the Sonic community and the fan base and determine what made Sonic popular. They had already determined that there were a ton of people who grew up with classic Sonic and wanted more classic Sonic. And that's why classic Sonic is where it is right now, in Sonic Mania. But in dissecting this, in looking at what made Sonic popular, or at least what the fans, the fanatics wanted, this is what we ended up with. Let's talk about it. So I said they're paying attention to the community now. And they really are paying attention to the community. They analyzed your common Sonic fanfiction, your DeviantArt pages filled with original Sonic characters, aka fanfiction art. So, surveying the online landscape of what fans have created, they came to a conclusion. That conclusion was Sonic Forces. The storyline of Sonic Forces has several past enemies of Sonic all materializing at the same time in order to defeat Sonic. The world itself falls into the villain's control in an XCOM 2 style map where all the territories are red, and as you do stages, you get to liberate the areas. This is a design choice, having a post-apocalyptic Eggman-controlled world, and it was panned by a lot of fans, especially fans of the newer games. The usual criticism is that these cute, fluffy characters do not need dark, edgy stories, and the darker themes do not fit the overall tone. But what most critics don't seem to understand is just where Sonic Team got those post-apocalyptic, dark settings from.
I do miss the beauty of this place when I'm away. Mark my words, Hedgehog. Before this day is done, you and the Power Rings will be right in the palm of my hand.
The developers looked at what Sonic fans on the internet liked. We aren't talking about people who like Sonic games. We're talking about the strictest definitions of fan. Fanatics. Sonic fanatics tend to praise the Saturday morning Sonic cartoon show. Not that one. That one, the world over, will be remembered as the bad one. Running concurrent to that series was this one.
Blue streak speeds by. Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog. Don't doubt what he can do. Can really move. Sonic, he's got an attitude. Sonic.
The fanbase would label this one Sonic Sat AM because it ran on Saturday mornings. And honestly, it's one of the cartoons I really, really liked back then. The storyline features Dr. Robotnik overthrowing the king and turning the peaceful kingdom into Robotropolis. Then he converts the citizens of the kingdom into robots, so it's up to Sonic and his fellow freedom fighters to overthrow Robotnik and restore the green to the world. Yes, it's an environmentalist theme, but it's subtle and never waved in your face or put before the plot of the show itself. The series features Tails to a lesser extent, but he's just a kid and he's treated as such. The real problematic character was Princess Sally, who was a good character in her own right. However, she's another victim of the queen but not queen trope. Like so many other cartoons, comics, and young adult novels featuring this trope, her father, the king, is alive somewhere. Somehow. It's just no one can see or contact him. So she's the de facto leader of the resistance. She should be a queen, but she's not, so she gets to be a pretty princess, with no actual responsibilities. Well, remember when I said that she was a problematic character? It wasn't because of the trope affecting her. To create a Helen of Troy parallel here, she was the face that launched 1,000 furries. I'm sorry, I don't share that fetish. That aside, the series concluded well with Dr. Robotnik being soundly defeated. But it left a small cliffhanger at the end, just in case. The storyline, characters, and setting was shared by the Sonic the Hedgehog comics, and the rushed cartoon-only ending was replaced by a flowing storyline that adapted Sonic and Knuckles, as well as Sonic Adventure stories into it. In the comics, Dr. Robotnik actually died. For good. Killed by Sonic. And the Eggman was a kind of cyber-organic Robotnik replacement. Yeah, I know in the Japanese version of the games, Dr. Robotnik has always been called Eggman, but the comics had a pretty good way of dealing with, you know, his overhaul and his change in name. It was a great way of handling that change without trivializing the Robotnik character and his own unique backstory. Robotnik got to tell his story, and then he died, and Eggman replaced him. So what's the point of all this? This series was dark and fans loved it.
We captured a freedom fighter.
Oh, that's good. That's very good, Sniffly. Where is he?
Bring in the prisoner.
The sheer amount of fan fiction, fan art, and other creations centering around these plots and characters left the developers of Sonic Forces with no other conclusion. Then hardcore Sonic fanatics wanted a dark, post-apocalyptic, reclaiming the world from Eggman's story, which is what the cartoon and the comics were about. That's why Sonic Forces is dark. The problem is, it really failed to execute it well. So after Sonic was tortured for months, her reaction to the news is akin to someone having thrown her half-full soda away, and she knew she shouldn't have left it unattended, so she isn't angry, but she was still going to drink that other half, so it kind of sucks, and she's sad about it. Anyway, because Sonic is out of commission, and there's a small ragtag resistance trying to take back the world from Robotnik, everyone has to put their hopes on Knuckles, why not? He's the resistance leader. Since when was Knuckles fit to lead anything? Hey, what happened to the Master Emerald anyway? Oh well, the fate of Angel Island is the least of my concerns when I see Silver the Hedgehog in the Resistance base. For those who don't know, Silver was born in a dystopian future where the god of fire had ravaged the entire world. He came back in time to prevent it, and with that future prevented, Silver's timeline no longer existed. Nonsense story aside, the Resistance has a new member. If you go to Google image search and type in your name, followed by the Hedgehog, it's very likely you'll see things you can't unsee. And now you can save Sonic before they banish him into space.
They're getting ready to banish him into space.
You heard that right. Banish him into space.
They're getting ready to banish him into space.
Now let's get to the game itself. The game is split into 4 main sections. Your original character, do not steal. Modern Sonic Boost gameplay. Your original character and modern Sonic together, aka fanfiction mode. And finally, Classic Sonic. Each section has its own problems, and you can see how the design strains against itself. This is an example where any one of these gameplay styles could have potentially been tweaked to be passable or even good. But the inclusion of them all and the split development time has left the game bad. Yes, I said it, Sonic Forces is a bad video game. The gameplay of Sonic Forces is chaotic. The best example are the large sections where it depends on you doing nothing. I'm not joking. Proper platforming up till that point tells you when they're enemies, you either need to shoot to kill them or you need to jump over them. If you see a box, you need to jump over it. So the game has you occasionally jumping over things or jumping onto platforms, you know, hitting the jump button. But in this particular spot, you need to just hold the fire button in order to kill the enemies and continue running. If you don't continue running, you will not have the momentum in order to continue across the pit once you hit the bumper. If you follow your instincts, which you've built up in that stage thus far by hitting the jump button, and you try to jump over the pit, you'll fall into the pit because the bumper needs to be hit, but it needs to be hit at a certain speed. So the game strains against its own design in this case. They have literally forgotten the purpose of speed and momentum in these stages, and instead speed boosters and bumpers will keep you running the entire time until there are things you need to jump over. The physics system that made Sonic great is gone. Now you'd think, well, at least we have Classic Sonic here, right? Well, no. Classic Sonic is even more floaty than Generations, and just in general broken. The stages are badly laid out, and so are all of the side-scrolling segments of modern Sonic and your original character. So, if the game is a failure in gameplay, failure in story, and a failure in pretty much every respect, does it have any redeeming aspects to it? Well, oddly enough, I actually think of one of the main criticisms other people have of the game is a point in its favor. When your original character and Sonic the Hedgehog team up,
send reinforcements if you don't think you can handle it. No need. The two of us are more than enough. We'll blitz the place and open up a path for the resistance. Right, partner?
Sonic throws out cheesy fanfiction lines like, "Yeah, buddy, we're unstoppable."
It doesn't matter what obstacles they put in our way.
Here we go.
We'll blow past everything they throw at us. Double boost!
I failed. I failed the double boost. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It plays off the power of friendship and your friendship with Sonic. It's cringy, cheesy fanfiction dialogue.
Yeah, that's how it's done. We've got unstoppable speed and timing. We just have to keep this up.
That is unapologetically slathered all over the product without even a hint of sarcasm.
This isn't where we were meant to end up. Let's head back. Everyone's waiting for us. Double boost! We've got this! Keep it up, partner! Nothing can contain the two of us at max power, not even null space!
In theme, they nailed the fanfiction premise. Your character and Sonic become buds and take Eggman down together.
Now let's track down Eggman.
That was so bad. Yep. They set out to execute that, and they executed it perfectly. I don't feel that's a mark against the game. I feel that they could have tightened that up and built the entire game around that instead of trying to build all of these side elements and do the 2D and the 3D. They could have focused an entire game around that fan fiction ideal. And if they had done that, they would have made a game that was just as cheesy, just as corny, just as cringy, but very, very fun. It would have been a sarcasm-free, unapologetic fanfiction Sonic triumph, but they didn't do that. As I said before, the game strains against its own design and tries to be 2D, tries to be 3D, tries to be constant running, then you run into a block and you stop. You have to jump on these platforms. It doesn't understand pacing or physics or exploration in any proper sense. Everything is half-assed. Now let's get into the worst part of this. It's the shoehorn. A shoehorn is a device that allows your foot to fit in a shoe that is slightly too small for your foot to be able to slide in. In this case, they implied the shoehorn in Sonic Forces in order to get classic Sonic, where he does not fit at all. The storyline does not fit classic Sonic. They say, hey, you're Sonic from another dimension. Another dimension. Well, when we saw him in Generations, it was very clear that this was time travel. Now, it's another dimension, apparently. Classic Sonic has no place being here. And this is from someone who loves Sonic 2, 3, Knuckles, and Mania. Classic Sonic was forced into Sonic Forces. Terrible puns aside, I know why they did it. They saw people like me who condemn the 3D Sonics for their flaws, compared to the superior 2D gameplay. And the problem is that 2D gameplay needs to be executed well and not half-assed. In Sonic Forces, the 2D was half-assed. They tried to please everyone, and when you try to please everyone, you create something that no one can relate to. And there you have it, Sonic Forces. I give it the final rating of banish it into space. Is that the Amulet of Kings? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. There we go.
I was born 87 years ago. For 65 years, I've ruled as Tamriel's emperor. But for all these years, I've never been the ruler of my own dreams.
They're getting ready to banish him into space.
They're getting ready to banish him into space. They're getting ready to banish him into space. I'm gonna banish you into space.
What? You can't be serious.
Oh, shit.
Eggman's been keeping Sonic alive all this time. He's been waiting to show him his completed empire before banishing him.
Banishing him into space.
Torturing Sonic just to pass the time. Oh, that's low, even for Eggman.
So he's been torturing Sonic for months.
Eggman got wind of our rescue plan and is moving forward with his plan ahead of schedule. The clock is ticking, boss. But we don't even know where he's being held captive. Yes, we do. Eggman rebuilt the Death Egg. That's where he's keeping Sonic.
Well, he's rebuilt the Death Egg like 4 times now.
The Death Egg? Oh, man.
Oh, shit.
That's not good.
Vector, everyone who is a part of Chaotix, please get the hell out.
None of this is good, Vector. That's why it's called war.
War. War never changes.
They had torture in Freedom Planet, and the tonal dissonance in that game was huge. But this is... Look at Amy! Look at Amy's face! They've been torturing him for months, and you're okay with it!
That's horrible! We have to rescue him!
Oh, that's horrible! Okay, so that's her reaction. That's her reaction. That's horrible. Someone wasted my soda. I was gonna drink that. Sonic's being tortured for months. Yeah, I'm trying too hard, and it's getting my character killed. I'm serious. Like, all my deaths have been because I tried to jump over the pit. You know, instead of running straight. It's funny.
Many of our brethren were held here.
Many of our brethren were held here. We will free our brethren, and there will be a great revolution. A permanent animal revolution. Triggering people with politics. Okay, here's the deal. I was trying to jump over the pit, and that was what was killing me. The only way to get over the pit is to run straight and not jump. And then this little grapple line will catch you and you'll go up and around it because, you know, this game rewards you being dumb and not taking action. Oh, a helmet? Different glasses? Of course. What? You can use avatars from around the world. Wait, what? OC, please rent. Oh my. This gamer. It's a good thing she has that hat on, so we know that she's a gamer. Because we wouldn't have known that if she didn't have that hat. What happened to Don't Steal? You said this is a bad fanfic level. Are you unaware of what this game is? Like, that's the whole point of the game. It's a bad Sonic fanfiction. There we go. That's what I wanted to do with lightning. Got it. Oh, fuck, failed. I still have 3 rings, though. Works, I guess. Yeah, it's got new moves. I have 0 rings. I'm gonna die the next time I get hit.
There's nothing the 3 of us can't achieve together. Victory is ours for the taking. Triple boost.
Of course. Oh my. How are you supposed to tell what's going on? I was able to tell what was going on. Achievement unlocked, save the world. It embraced the cheese. It just failed flat on the execution.
See you later, buddy.
Congratulations. You have completed a great game and proved the justice of our culture. Now rest, our heroes. The justice of our culture, indeed. Aha! Victory!